Episode 9. Desperate measures chaos consumed Stonehold's Gate Plaza. The dwarven shield wall buckled under the relentless assault of Gor'koth's elite Umbral warriors, axes and swords clanging a dissonant symphony of war. From the cracked flagstones beneath their feet, black tendrils of shadow lashed out with terrifying speed, snaring unwary defenders and dragging them screaming into the fractured stone. Hope dwindled with every fallen dwarf, every surge of the Umbral tide. Gor'koth, the hulking, shadow-wreathed hobgoblin commander, threw back his head and laughed, a harsh, grating sound that cut through the din. He raised a jagged piece of obsidian, larger than the shard Kaelen possessed, pulsing with a sickening dark energy. As Gor'koth channeled power through it, the shadows deepened. The tendrils attacked with greater ferocity, and his troops fought with unnatural berserk frenzy. Amidst the desperate struggle, Runekeeper Thane frantically consulted the scorched texts he had salvaged and peered at a small fragment of the cracked focus stone he had retrieved from the resonance chamber. His eyes widened in horror. No, the ritual, the fracture, he stammered, grabbing Borin's arm. We didn't sever the link, we strengthened it. The focus stone cracked under the strain, grounding Malkor's influence directly into the Warden's core. It's a conduit. At the same moment, Borin cried out, not just feeling the cold presence below, but sensing it within the lashing shadows around them. It's not just below anymore. It's using the shadows to manifest here. As if summoned by Borin's words, a vast section of the plaza floor directly before the inner gatehouse buckled and collapsed inwards with a deafening roar, revealing a newly formed chasm spewing dark energy. From this gaping wound in the heart of Stonehold, a monstrous form began to rise. Khazak-Ur. But it was hideously transformed. Its body, once rock and crystal, was now predominantly shifting shadow, laced with veins of cold blue-white energy that pulsed where magma eyes once burned. It moved with unnatural deliberation, raising colossal, shadowy arms not to strike wildly, but to reshape the battlefield. Stone barriers erupted, cutting off dwarven squads. Spiked shadows burst from the ground, impaling Umbral and dwarf alike with cold indifference. It was a terrifying engine of shadow and earth, controlled by Malkor's will. The sight shattered the last vestiges of organized defense. Thane Borgrim, his face carved with grief and fury as he watched his city and his people being consumed, knew the line was broken beyond repair. He met Captain Brock's eye, a silent, terrible understanding passing between them. "Brock, the inner gate. Hold it till the last stone falls," he bellowed, his voice thick with finality. Then, with a roar that echoed the mountain's own past fury, Borgrim lowered his head and charged, axe held high directly at Gor'koth and his elite guard. A suicidal, hopeless charge, meant only to buy moments, to draw the enemy commander's attention. Several loyal Thane's Guard followed their king into the jaws of death. Seeing Borgrim's sacrifice, Lyra knew small spells were useless. The overwhelming power of the Warden and Gor'koth's relic demanded something more. Closing her eyes amidst the swirling chaos, she reached out not just with her own power, but to the very stones of the plaza, the decorative crystals embedded in the walls, the latent energy Thane had spoken of. Ignoring the risk, she pulled, drawing raw, untamed power into herself and unleashing it in a chaotic, uncontrolled nova of shimmering energy. It didn't target anything specific but washed across the plaza, disrupting the shadow tendrils momentarily, causing Gor'koth's relic to flicker erratically and making even Khazak-Ur pause in its manifestation. The backlash sent Lyra staggering, blood trickling from her nose, but it created a vital instant of disruption. In that instant, Elara, desperately scanning the collapsing architecture while dodging grasping shadows, pointed towards a heavily damaged archway near the plaza's edge. "Kaelen! Schematics showed an old aqueduct conduit behind there. It might lead deeper past the breach." Kaelen saw it, a desperate gamble, but the only one left. Borgrim's charge wouldn't last long. "Grok, clear the way! Everyone else, fighting retreat! Move!" Grok bellowed and charged the archway, his great axe pulverizing umbrals and crumbling stonework alike, forging a path through the chaos. Kaelen Brock, having obeyed Borgrim's order by ensuring the inner gate was briefly secure before falling back. Boren and the few remaining dwarves formed a desperate rear guard, covering the retreat towards the opening Grok was creating. Boren thrust his hammer forward, pulses of golden light keeping the nearest shadow tendrils at bay. They saw Borgrim overwhelmed, pulled down by sheer numbers near Gor'koth. They heard the Umbral commander's triumphant roar. They reached the narrow opening Grok had torn through the rubble beneath the arch. It led into darkness, the sound of rushing water echoing faintly from below. "Go! Get through!" Kaelen yelled. Elara slipped in first, followed by Lyra, Thane, Boren, and the dwarves. Khazak-Ur, recovering from Lyra's blast, turned its cold gaze towards them, raising a shadowy hand. Gor'koth, finished with Borgrim, signaled his troops forward. "Grok! Now!" Kaelen yelled as he dove through the opening. Grok stood his ground for a vital second, smashing back the first umbrals to reach the hole, before heaving a massive, cracked lintel stone downwards with a titanic effort. The ancient conduit entrance collapsed inwards with a deafening crunch, sealing the passage behind them, plunging them into near-total darkness. Dust choked the air in the cramped, damp tunnel. The sounds of the battle outside were suddenly muffled, replaced by the rush of unseen water and their own ragged breathing. They were alive. Kaelen, Lyra, Boren, Elara, Grok, Runekeeper Thane, Captain Brock, and perhaps 4 other dwarven veterans, a handful of survivors. Thane Borgrim was gone. Stonehold's main defense was shattered. Khazak-Ur, an avatar of shadow, controlled the Plaza alongside Gor'koth and the Umbral Horde. Their desperate mission had averted one catastrophe, only to plunge them headlong into another. Their quest had become a flight for survival, deep within the bowels of a dying city. Kaelen looked at the faces around him, illuminated faintly by Lyra's weakly pulsing focus stone. Exhausted, battered, grief-stricken, but alive. And where there was life, there was still a flicker of defiance. Escape does not mean safety. Deeper within the mountain, cut off and pursued, the survivors must navigate the treacherous ruins of Stonehold's forgotten ways. With the city breached and the Warden corrupted, what hope remains? Where do they go from here? Teaser for Episode 10. Quick cuts. The survivors navigating dark, water-filled tunnels using Elara's knowledge and Lyra's light. Thane discovering something crucial in his texts by faint light. Gor'koth consolidating his hold on the gate plaza, communicating with a shadowy projection of Rakul. Khazak-Ur slowly, deliberately extending its shadowy influence through Stonehold's lower levels. Kaelen and Brock having a tense discussion about leadership next steps. A glimpse of a hidden ancient forge deep within the mountain. Next time on Echoes of Eredor, the sunken city. Lost in the depths, the companions must find a new path, confront internal conflicts, and seek a hidden sanctuary or weapon before the shadow consumes all of Stonehold. Where will the tunnels lead? Click to watch Episode 10 and subscribe to Echoes of Eredor.